Television show, children's television show called Happiness. All these Nessies. It was in the land of Nessies. and this was about happiness. We're clever people. We're clever. We could think of so much. And yet we start, all of a sudden with it, but I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to do this. We're crazy people. We are just bonkers. We're not bad, we're not stupid, we're just insane. Anyone who would deny the invisible presence of God or whatever, you don't even have to call it God, but the invisible presence. Well, how insane is that, to deny the power that is within you? I was reading in Ernest Holmes' book, The Science of Mind, this week, the original text, and he's talking about the invisible thinker. That there's an invisible thinker inside of each and every one of us. And he goes on to say, the brain doesn't think. I always thought the brain thought growing up, but the brain doesn't think. Because if you took the brain out of the body, it would not continue to do anything. The legs, if you severed your legs, the legs would not continue to walk on their own. I would not continue to hold this microphone if you severed my hand. And so there is an invisible thinker inside of me that makes this happen. And this thinker the logical conclusion to me is that this thinker must have always existed. And it wasn't reliant upon my body. And so the thinker will always continue. Now, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Today's talk is based on the law of attraction, and the talk is called Thoughts Held in Mind. Because in unity, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And so what are you thinking? And it's not about you're going to be punished for your thoughts, but you are going to live in the results of them. And so if you're thinking about lack, you get to experience lack. Fortunately, it's temporary, because if you change your thought to abundance, you'll start living in abundance. And what I have to laugh at, but I've been thinking about abundance, and I'm still living in lack, and I said, oh, wait a minute. Then I just heard a thought of lack there. You know, I just heard your conviction that somehow, we were talking about in the class over there, that it seems safer to focus on what's missing. And I said it's because it's familiar. It's familiar for a lot of us. That we have established a bed, we'll say, of a safety zone. Just a pure safety zone. And why would we keep trying to be safe? Well, it's because we believe in danger. We are convinced that danger is real. Despite the Jesus Christ message, which is we cannot die, the body will go away, but we ourselves, that which I am, will never die. This week I've gotten a much greater understanding, and I have known it for years, but a much greater understanding that there truly is one mind. Capital M, one mind. And there's a lot of little m minds. That's all of us that are living in it. But we're still drawing our strength. We're drawing upon the one mind for everything. Does that make sense? We're still drawing upon the one mind. We are not separate entities unto ourselves, without a source. And so, if we wish to create a new experience, we just tap into the one mind, but do it consciously. And it's not a matter of getting stuff. I have been watching the Bible these past several weeks. Showing it on Friday nights almost by myself. Usually one or two other people join me for it. And that's fine, because I offered this because I want to do it. I want to read that New Testament the whole way through. And as I told you, it's not my favorite version. It's the Common English version, which they've changed a lot of the wording. And there's some familiar texts I'd rather have. I'd rather have Jesus wept than Jesus cried when he heard this. Which I heard the other night. It was a little odd. I'd rather have some of the old, but as I'm listening to the Bible and reading it up on the screen, and I'm hearing what they're saying, what the narrator is saying, and what the writers are attempting to convey. And what I'm seeing is so much of the Bible was put together by a group of people who wanted to remain safe. And a group of people who believed substantially in the physical world as real, as opposed to the invisible world. They were trying to make themselves safe. Why? Because they believed in danger. There's a lot of self-help books in the world that warn you of the dangers of poverty, the dangers of ill health, the dangers of the world. So come read my book so you can get past these dangers. And then what dangers are there except what I'm making up? There's nothing dangerous in the world. If I can't truly die, granted my body will go away at some point. I just love that, I think I may have said this last week, Mary Manna Morrissey says in her prosperity class that a man came to his minister one day and said, I've just been to the doctor and I learned that I'm going to die. And the minister said, I'm really surprised that you've reached this age and you've only just learned you're going to die. It's like we've been dying to our old thoughts every day since we were born. We've been dying to our egoic self and struggling to resurrect it on a daily basis. You know, let me kill off my ego because my ego's bad. But then, you know what? I think I'll resurrect that ego. Ego, come forth. And we resurrect our ego when it's convenient. But when I see how much of spiritual books are written by the ego, the Bible is highly written by the ego. However, what I also saw by reading this on a weekly basis now is that truth is stronger than ego. Because truth keeps sneaking in there. Truth statements keep sneaking in there. Amongst all that ego, amongst all that belief in danger and famine and all wars and all hatred and this must be killed and this must be wiped out because then I'll be safe. Truth keeps sneaking in. In the beginning was the Word. Well, what was the Word in the beginning? Let there be light. And there was light. There was a divine idea in the beginning. There was a divine idea. And for all of us, all of our desires, within that desire, there is a divine idea. There is and often we block out that divine idea because we forget and we confuse the idea with the physical world. But there is a divine idea for awakening within every thought. Every one of us here today wants to prove that God is real. Every single one of us. And then at some point along the way, within that goal, we forget that God is real, and the goal becomes real. The objects on the journey become real and to our minds, and we forget. We forget what the real function was, what the divine idea was. So when I came into Unity, I heard about all this stuff. Actually, even when I came into the 12 Steps, I heard about all this stuff. I wanted to be the one to prove it's true. I wanted to prove that all of the promises are true. Everything that all of my spiritual teachers have ever offered me informationally, I wanted to prove that they were true. It was very important to me to be the living example of what they promised. And yeah, they promised physical stuff, but what they promised me is I would know the source that creates the physical stuff. And because that's much more valuable. You will be far richer if you understand the source of the good you wish to experience, rather than just the stuff you want to experience, because the stuff you want to experience is limited. Alexandra and I were at lunch on I think it was Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. We were at lunch at BJ Ryan's, and we had just finished our lunch. We had just paid, and we smelled something odd. And suddenly the white stuff is running through the restaurant. Well, the trophy store next door was on fire. I mean, a big honking fire. And so everybody had to leave. Of course, my first egoic thought is, Ransom, we just paid our check. Other people here got to eat. They hadn't paid the checks yet. They got to leave. As if I don't get enough free meals in my life. In fact, I think Alexandra had paid for my lunch that day. She bought me a birthday lunch. And so... So we stood outside, and I'm watching smoke pour down the street. 8 fire engines, ladders going up to the roof, and B.J. Rents was not hurt, by the way. Trophy store not so much, or trophy store not so happy. And it started with a label maker they had set down on a cardboard box. But as we're walking back, I said to Alexander, this is why we are instructed. Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth. Well, B.J. Ryan's is a treasure on earth for me. It truly is. But if I am me and I am you, I own the trophy store too. And I own the apartment above it. And so I have a thing in my gut for the experience of, well, fire is rather violent. Just as water can be violent. Just as our words can be violent in our actions. Obviously, we are powerless over this world. But we are not powerless over what we think of it. Life isn't happening to us or at us. Life is taking place, and I'm deciding what to think of it. My parents are no longer deciding what I can think of it. I am deciding every millisecond of every day what everything means for me. It's not happening to me. And I'm not sitting around anymore waiting for life to happen to me. I'm not waiting for health to happen to me. I'm not waiting for wealth to happen to me. Except in those milliseconds when I forget. When I forget who and what I am. That's why I keep saying in my prayers lately, let's be glad that God is what God is, and that God isn't what God isn't. And let's be glad that we are what we are. And let's be so glad that we're not what we aren't. And let's be so glad that life is what it is, and it's not what it's not. And if you want to discern the difference, well, there's logical steps into it. What is what doesn't change. Well, let's face it, your misery changes, so misery must not be. Lack changes, so lack must not be. But love unto itself, the giving force of nature, well, that never changes. My understanding of it does. But the love itself doesn't change. And so therefore, love must be real. I have observed, I told you this before, in some of my days of greatest angst, I have observed, but there's still joy down here in my gut. There's still knowing that something good is taking place here. I have seen it, I have witnessed it, I have felt it. And so I thought, oh, so joy must be real. Joy must always be here. I'm deciding whether or not to experience it. And if that's the case, then peace must always be here, and I'm deciding whether or not to experience it. And therefore, love must always be here, and I'm deciding how I want to experience love. And so I'm the thinker who thinks the thought. And thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. We've been on this metaphysical Lent. How many here are still seeking to participate in it? Okay, how's it going? Okay. I'll tell you, I'm having a difficult time. I'm having lots of thoughts are coming up to be healed. Lots and lots of thoughts, lots of opinions are coming up to be reassessed. And so I find myself in a daily, hourly, on the half hour, whatever, 15 minutes, quarter hour, I'm having to decide to think differently. Because otherwise I'm just going to be right.
The Oscars were tough.
The Oscars were pretty easy, I thought. I thought the Oscars were very easy last week. I thought we had a great time watching the Academy Awards with friends, and I felt we criticized far less than we ever would have. In fact, I praised someone's homemade dress. I had great praise for that dress. I wondered how long it took her to whip it up on the sewing machine. But actually, I had a lot of fun that night. I thought I left in a pretty good mood. A very good mood, pleasant. I didn't feel I abused myself. I didn't feel I abused anybody in the room or anybody on screen. I caught myself mid-sentence a few times. And what that shows me is, habits. I have habits. I can forgive those. I can forgive those. The point of this Lenten fast is to become aware. And so that you can, once again, consciously choose. Consciously choose what you're going to think about everything you see. Do you want to base it on your egoic opinions, or do you want to ask Spirit what you're seeing? Do you want to ask the highest voice, the highest intelligence in you, what it is you are, what is being shown to you in front of you? Wouldn't you rather know that? Isn't that why you come up these steps on a Sunday morning? Is because you would rather choose for peace, choose for joy, choose for love, choose for wisdom, choose what is rather than choose what isn't. Now, a little book here for the law of abundance, or law of attraction. What he says at the beginning. There we go. The law of attraction states, mind is creative and operates through the law of attraction. When we are in harmony with the universal laws and understand their operation, we are sending out currents charged with magnetic power. These currents come in contact with the minds of others, creating a positive pattern and connection. The universal law of attraction is the method by which the law of pure potentiality and the law of believing and knowing is fulfilled. The law of relativity shows our connection to all, and it is from all that the law of attraction draws the people and materials needed to fulfill our goals. If our goals are centered upon seeking first the kingdom, that is being in harmony with universal laws. What is needed will be attracted to us. There we go. The instruction is, seek ye first the kingdom. We're back to that again. Seek ye first that which is spiritual. Seek ye first seek ye first the source of your good. You don't have to try to be the source of your good anymore. Next time you hear yourself say, I have to figure this out, say, that's not true. I have to know God. It is already figured out. Next time you're trying to figure out your health, next time you're trying to figure out your money, next time you're trying to figure out your job, next time you're trying to figure out how to get somewhere, next time you're trying to figure it out, your body, whatever, you say, it is figured out. My job is to know the kingdom. That's all. And knowing the kingdom is very simple. It can be that simple. What I did there was I shut up. And I just went into being. I didn't get a story about the kingdom. I didn't get a story about my job. I didn't get a story about my money or my body or my anything. I just was. And in that moment of being, oh man, so much stuff can take place. What I need can come to me then. I'm making space for the fulfillment of my needs. Instead of masking and filling up that space with thoughts, filling up that space with doubts, filling up that space with me, I'm just allowing the space now to be filled by Spirit, by truth, by what is, rather than what is not. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So as Scott sang and David wrote, think big. Think of yourself as a giant. Think of yourself as one with God, as the beloved, beautiful child of God. Think of yourself and your neighbor. No matter how you feel about your neighbor, you still think of your neighbor as a beloved child of God. You don't want those you don't like to be less than God. You don't want anything in your past to be less than perfect. You don't want anything in your present to be less than perfect. So quit insisting that it could possibly be less than perfect. And think big. Start to see what is. I can see what is. Are we clear on that? We have the ability. I can see what is. I can see what is. Let's say that together. I can see what is. Let's say it again. I can see what is. And one more time. I can see what is. And so it is.